Welcome back to another episode of Cody Builds. Tonight we're cutting the rust out of this cab. All right, let's take a look here. I went ahead, obviously, as you just saw, and I got the back of this panel cut up as high as I'm gonna take it. So what we're looking at here now is gonna be this flange that we need to weld back to. And you can see just how pitted and nasty this flange is. So I'm gonna have to cut this flange out as well. That's really unfortunate. I was hoping not to have to do that, but it's so thin in here that I just don't see a way around it. I'm gonna cut this flange off. I've already got my other piece down here. We're gonna use that to trace out a new patch piece out of 18 gauge. We'll make this out of 16 gauge because this is a little bit thicker. We'll weld this in, and then we'll have this back wall back solid. That basically is the last of kind of the rot that's not in the floor of the firewall. We've already got everything cleaned up on the rockers and the door frames here. Essentially what that leaves us with is this back wall, floors, the firewall, and we are gonna have some work in the kick panels as well. So yeah, I know that's still a lot of work to go. However, we've already come a really long ways, and this whole project is just about ticking one box off at a time. Every week, making a little bit of progress. Tonight, we're gonna make a little bit more. So the goal for tonight, to cut this flange out, make us two pieces that we can weld back in, a replacement flange and then a patch panel for this back wall, and to get those welded back in. That's the goal for tonight. Stick around, let's see if we can get it done. All right, I got everything cleaned up. I'm ready to start cutting out my new pieces. I've got my piece of 16 gauge up here on the table. Kind of hard to see. I've already got it marked out to cut out. I'm just gonna go ahead and get right to cutting this out. And then once I'm done with that, I'm gonna do the same thing with a piece of 18 gauge for the back wall. You saw I went ahead and cleaned up the paint and everything off the bottom of that, so we're all ready to weld in there. Basically, once I get these things cut out, we're ready to start patching them in. You're not hearing a whole lot from me tonight. That's because we got a lot to get done and I'm on a short time frame here. I want to get this cab to a certain point by the end of December. So I'm gonna really be pushing in these next couple videos. I got some other videos not related to the truck that are gonna be coming. So you guys don't really wanna hear me talk anyways. You wanna see the work get done. So let's get back to work. Okay, got a very important lesson for everybody to learn right now. I know I've talked about this a long time ago. Anytime I'm in the shop and I do anything that has, you know, a lot of sparks from grinding or sparks from welding, I always do a 30-minute fire watch after I'm done working, just to make sure that nothing's burning, nothing's gonna catch fire, and make sure that the shop stays safe and I don't burn the garage down. Here's why that's important, guys. Check this out. I had one lone leaf down on the floor here, and you can see it smoldering right now. I could smell, I was cutting at the bench, I could smell something burning, But I think that's just like a perfect little example of what can happen if you're working in the shop, you're not paying attention. Let's say that's the last thing I did for the night. I just threw my tools on the bench and got out of here. Maybe there's more than one leaf on the ground. Maybe you got a bunch. It sparks, it ignites, it sets your whole garage on fire. You lose everything. So I just thought that was a great opportunity to talk about, again, a fire watch at the end of the night. Before you go in the house, have a cold beer, sit and relax, listen to a little music, put your tools away. Wait about at least 30 minutes. Make sure you're not seeing any smoke, sparks, anything. Keep your project safe, keep your garage safe, keep your tools safe. All right, I need to figure out how long I need this patch to be off this back wall. So I'm gonna take a few measurements here. I try to get that cut as straight as I could, but there's no guarantees that it's actually 100% straight there. The flange I made for down here is 3/4 of an inch long. So we're going to measure from the bottom of this panel to our current flange, which is 1 inch there, 1 inch there, shade under an inch there, 1 inch there. So it's pretty consistently 1 inch across the back. I need to add 3/4 of an inch. So we're gonna make that flange, or this patch piece, 1 3/4 of an inch wide. Now, it just so happens that one of my squares here is 1 3/4 of an inch wide. I'm just gonna use that to stencil out my cut marks here. This will make things nice and straight. I won't have a wavy line from trying to measure 1 3/4 of an inch and connect the dots and keep all that straight. If it's not straight, it'll be because my cut is crooked. So I'm just gonna line this up here, and I'm gonna trace the back side of this just like that. And I'm gonna do that all the way down this patch piece until I have the overall length that I need for that patch panel. Second lesson of the night. We're all about learning lessons tonight. Measure twice, cut once. I thought I was being so sharp using my square as my 1 3/4 inch stencil, except this is only 1.5 inches wide. So now I've got this nice piece of 1.5 inch wide strap here. That is gonna go in my save for later pile because now my patch is 1/4 inch short. So I'm gonna go ahead and measure up another one. That's what I get for rushing. I'm gonna take my time. I'm gonna measure this one out appropriately. We're gonna measure out 1 3/4 inches, cut another one out. And then we're gonna start welding everything in. I don't know if I'm gonna get everything fully solid welded in tonight, but at a minimum, I'm gonna have everything tacked in. Once I've got this patch panel for the back wall cut out, I do need to mark it about every 2.5 inches to be drilled. And while I'm thinking about it, actually, I may even do that before I cut it. It'll be easier to do with this as a whole sheet than it will be as a thin strip. So even though I screwed up on the first cut, this is actually gonna help me out a little bit now that I think about it. I'll go ahead, I will stencil out what needs to be cut, but then I'll drill this out as it's on the sheet, and then I'll cut it out, grind everything up, and then we'll get it welded into place. All right, you can see I got this. I just went ahead and tacked this flange in. I've got it kind of bent in where it's gonna go in place. And then I started trying to fit this panel in here. I kind of put that little dent down in there and did the same thing, little crease down on that side. So we're basically ready to start welding this stuff in. I need to go ahead and weld this flange in completely first. Get it fit and welded and then ground down smooth so that then I can fit my patch in. So I'm gonna go ahead and get to that. We'll weld this whole thing in, get it cleaned up, and then lastly tonight we'll get this patch welded in. Look how much better that flange looks. It looks so good. I'm not gonna spend a ton of time really like perfecting the welds on this or anything like that with the grinder and the die grinder and all that, because this is immediately gonna be covered up. And then on the inside of the cab, where the flange meets this back panel, there will be seam sealer all along that inside edge. So it doesn't have to be pretty, but it does look significantly better already than it did previously. So we're ready to start fitting in our patch panel. So I'm gonna go ahead and get to that. I'm running out of time here tonight, but I at least wanna get that patch panel started to be welded in. I don't know if I'll get to weld the whole thing in, but at least we'll get it tacked into place and we'll get our flange welded up. And yeah, we'll see how it turns out. So I started to get this panel tacked in. I forgot to spray this with weld through primer. So I've only got 2 small tacks in the panel right now, so I just kind of angled it up, and I'm gonna hit the underside of both these panels with the weld through primer just to protect that metal when those 2 pieces of metal are sandwiched and welded together. All right, that's about all I got time for tonight, but you get the idea here, guys. I got this panel tacked in. It's looking really good. I'm gonna come around to the inside. I needed a little bit of motivation, so I stuck the, I just loosely set the floor pans in there. But look back here. Obviously, we still have light shining through where we haven't got things fully welded up yet. But man, how much cleaner does this look? I mean, we got all that rust out of there. We don't see all those rust holes. We got a nice tight fit now between the back wall and the floor of the cab here. That's all looking really, really good. I have a few adjustments I need to make. This side here, you'll notice isn't welded in quite as much. What I need to do is actually need to hammer from the back side a little bit because we're just a little bit concave where these two panels meet. I did the same thing over here, pushed it out. It actually comes out fairly easy. So when I have a little more time, I'm gonna massage that out. It's just kind of loosely tacked in at the moment. I need to come back in and get everything stitch welded and finish up that patch. But I think that's where I'm gonna end this episode. I don't feel like you guys need to see me stitch weld that panel up. The hard part's done, getting everything kind of fit into place. I'm not super happy with this lower patch. I ended up having, I think, a little bit of a curve in one of these panels, probably this panel, the patch panel that I cut. And what ended up happening is I ended up getting kind of off a little bit more than I would have liked to my flange here. So you see I've got about a 1/4 inch gap down here between this panel and the flange. Not a big deal. You're not going to see any of this. The bed's going to be on the truck. It's not a big deal at all. It's just a nitpicky thing, you know. We're not trying to make this truck perfect. You know, I've said it a million times on this channel. We're not going for SEMA quality. Nobody's going to see the back half of this cab. The most important thing is that we've got the rust out of the back half. We've stopped the cancer. We're going to make this truck solid so that it will last for years to come. We won't be getting exhaust fumes or water or anything else inside the truck when we're driving it. That's the most important thing. And that's what we've got. And now, actually, that we've got that back wall in, this cab is really starting to stiffen up. You can feel it. As I roll the cab around on the dolly now, you can just feel how much more solid it is. It's not flexing and wobbling all over the place. You can actually pick a corner of the cab up and the whole half of the cab on that side comes with it, which is something fairly new for this truck. Before, if you kind of picked up on one side, the front, the back, you could actually hear and feel all the different panels loose from one another, just kind of flopping all over the place. So we're putting rigidity back in the cab. It's all looking really good. That's where I'm going to end this episode, guys. And you know what that means. If you don't work on your project, it will not work on itself. Get out in the garage, get building, and I'll see you on the next episode of Cody Builds.